Whispers from Below, a horror podcast by Justin W. Geis. Scary stories, both real and fake. Hello, listeners. Welcome to Season 4, Episode 6 of Whispers from Below, a podcast by a madman for madmen. I'm your resident psychopath, Justin W. Geis, and today's topic of discussion is the Black Dahlia. Now, before I get into this episode, I will say that this one is a little bit more gruesome, a little bit more adult than some of my past episodes, so if you are a younger listener, please beware if you ever come across something that's a trigger or anything that seems too adult. Come back next week. It'll probably be much better for you. For those of you that don't know, this is a true crime episode, so if you are into true crime, this is the episode for you. If you're not into true crime, I'll see you next week when I hopefully have something that's not true crime so that you can get back into it. That's the beauty of this show. If this week isn't for you, maybe next week will be. But this should be okay for most listeners. I would say if you're on the younger side, please just do be aware that the case is a little bit gruesome, so just keep that in mind. This is also an unsolved crime, which is really fun and a niche market that people really love as well, myself included. So yeah, let's get into it without further ado. So, Black Dahlia was the name given to a woman that goes by the name of Elizabeth Short by the press after her body was found. She was supposedly a hopeful Hollywood actress, and she was murdered in January of 1947. Again, this is an unsolved crime. Nobody knows who did it or how it happened, pretty much. Everything is up to speculation at this point. Elizabeth Short was born on July 29th, 1924, in Boston, Massachusetts. She was the third of 5 daughters to Cleo and Phoebe May Short. Her father's car was found by the Charlestown Bridge, abandoned in 1930. So at this point, she's about 6 years old. Her father's car is found just like chilling by this bridge. They assumed that he committed suicide because like all of his things were left in there. And so they were like, oh my God, he died. So Short's mother sort of had to kind of like get it together and sort of provide for the whole family now. Which was, I mean, I can imagine that's extremely hard, especially when you're 6 years old and you're not really understanding what happened. I imagine that could be kind of tough to deal with. So already she's kind of a trooper for just dealing with that in and of itself. Short herself, though, had respiratory issues. She actually underwent a lung surgery when she was a child, and the doctors recommended that she go to the South for winter because it helps with her breathing. Sort of whatever the air was doing in the winter and the fall was sort of messing with her lungs. So they recommended that she go south to a warmer climate for fall and winter, and then come back for spring and summer to stay with the family. So then she ends up spending winter months in Miami, Florida with some family friends, and then she goes back to it's basically like outside Boston in Massachusetts for spring and summer. But she just stays with some family friends and has like a bomb ass time in Miami during the fall and winter where it's like nice and warm. And she doesn't have as many respiratory issues, and she's doing much, 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 much better with that. She ended up dropping out of high school in her sophomore year. And then in late 1942, Short's mother received a letter that the father had actually just relocated to California and had started a completely new life. So Cleo had never actually killed himself. He never committed suicide. He just needed to get away. He just like couldn't handle the life that he had built in Massachusetts. So he decided to like basically fake a suicide and then start his life completely over. in California, which is fucking bonkers and crazy. But that's what he did. And so she ended up, she being Elizabeth, ended up moving out there to live with her father at age 18. She only lived there for like 6 months. She moved out due to a bunch of arguments and disagreements that came about between the two of them. So she was like, you know what? Fuck you. I'm moving out. I can't handle this. Also, I know I'm talking a lot about her backstory and not so much about the crime. I promise I will get into the crime. But I think that her backstory is important so that you can understand when I talk about the crime and the press and all that good, happy stuff. You'll understand why the story is so intriguing. I think that understanding the backstory sort of helps you be more interested in what's going on later in the plot. So, that being said, let's get right back into it. Sorry to just like pop off for a second, but people are going to be like, yeah, okay, we get it. She had a life, but what about her dying? Yeah, we're going to get there and it's cool. It's a cool death, honestly. But, we're not there yet. We got to get through her life. It's important. So she ends up moving out. She lived with some friends. She ended up staying with an Air Force sergeant that reportedly abused her, beat her a little bit. She ended up getting arrested on September 23rd, 1943, for underage drinking at a local bar in Santa Barbara. This ended up sending her back to Medford, Massachusetts with her mother. But instead of going back there, she decided to go to Florida, and then she would make her occasional visits back to Massachusetts. So instead of living in California with her father, she decides, you know what, I'm going to go back to Miami, and then I'm going to visit Massachusetts, like, basically whenever I see fit. But I'm going to live down here because it's better for my health. And everybody was, like, kind of chill with that. She ended up falling in love with a deployed Air Force major that proposed to her, or supposedly was like gonna propose to her, and she had already said yes. And then he ends up dying. So that's like really unfortunate. And she's kind of like, well, fuck. Um, I was really counting on that. So she ends up relocating to LA in July of 1946 to sort of get a new pace, a new life sort of thing. And she visits with Lieutenant Joseph Gordon Fickling, who is also in the Air Force. I guess she has like a type. She knew him from Florida. She decides to visit him, and then she spends the last 6 months of her life in LA working as a waitress. Now, some believe that she was an aspiring actress, and that's why she was working as a waitress, was to sort of pay for her headshots and classes and um, stuff like that. She was very pretty, very beautiful. Um, she had no acting credits. She like wasn't in auditions. Like, I don't know who decided to say that she was like a budding Hollywood star, but that's like not really corroborated by a lot of people. This is something that the press said, which is really fun. But a lot of what you hear when you think of Black Dahlia is like this Hollywood actress that got murdered, and she like wasn't a Hollywood actress at all. She was just like a normal girl, like living in LA that like got murdered, like by happenstance. In January 9th, 1947, this is when Short goes missing. So she goes missing on January 9th, and then January 15th, 1947, Short's naked body is found severed into two pieces in a vacant lot in Les Mer Park, LA. It's probably Les Mert. It's probably like Les Mert, but I'm like Les Mer. Because I don't know, French is fun, right? Right, guys? French is fun. Anyway, Lamert Park. Lamert Park. This isn't. I feel like this has been happening in like every episode lately where I don't know how to pronounce something. Somebody please correct me. My parents do. I'll get a message when they listen to an episode and they'll be like, it's this way. And I'm like, okay, thank you. And I don't remember how to properly pronounce anything. So I appreciate the help. Someone from LA, let me know. Is it Les Mer or Les Mert Park? Anyway, it's in LA, a park. She was discovered at around 10 a.m. by a mother who was walking with her 3-year-old daughter. At first, the woman actually thought that it was a discarded mannequin because there was no blood found on or inside of the body. She was severed around the waist. She had cuts from her lip to her ear. So she had these huge cuts that sort of went like up to give her like a huge smile sort of thing. She had been dead around 10 hours prior to discovery. The body had clearly been washed by whoever the killer was. There were no fingerprints found on the body. Intestines had been tucked neatly below the buttocks. The legs were spread, arms above the head, bent at 90-degree angles. Several slices of her thighs and breasts had been cut away. And near the body, detectives found a cement sack filled with watery blood, and they found a heel print, like from a boot. There were ligature marks on her ankles, wrists, and her neck, and a cut had been made between the second and third vertebrae. This all happened after death. So she wasn't like tortured, which is something nice. But all that to say, they thought this was a mannequin. Can you imagine what kind of fucked up mannequin that would be? Oh my god, I'm sure you can find it somewhere on the internet. Like a Black Dahlia mannequin. But yes, so the thing that really, I think, when I was reading this, like, chilled me, and, like, as I'm reading it out loud, I also want everybody to know, for, like, vibes, and, like, for purposes of, like, I usually work during the day or, like, super late at night, I record these either during the day or, like, super late at night, and this one is currently being recorded super late at night. So I'm talking about being like brutally tortured and murdered while like sitting alone in my dark apartment. So I hope that like this is as spine chilling for you as a listener as it is for me as a as a recording podcaster, as a fellow psychopath. This shit's spooky. It's really freaking me out. But the part that I think is the most like disturbing is that the body is like posed. I think if it was just like discarded and like thrown, even if it was like severed, I think I would have less of a sort of like distaste in my mouth for it. But it's the fact that the body is like placed and the intestines are placed below the butt. And then it's severed in half. The body is, partially put this way, and the arms are placed so. And it's missing skin from certain parts of it. But then also her smile, like they wanted her to be smiling. So they cut a smile into her face. And the body is completely washed in gasoline. So there's no fingerprints anywhere. And like, it's just like little things like that that sort of add to the like spooky feeling, that the creepy vibe that sort of goes along with this case, because it's unsolved. So whoever this like mentally unstable individual was either did this more or was like wandering the streets after doing this, just like living a life, and like hasn't been caught. I hate that. I hate that. I hate that. I hate that so much. Anyway, moving on. Um, so they actually realized that the cause of death was probably from the lacerations on the face. So those like lacerations hemorrhaged. and they probably bled out and died. That's how she died, was probably just from hemorrhaging from those cuts. I don't know about you, but I personally hate having to go to the grocery store. It takes up so much of my day when I could be starting a new hobby with that time, like soap carving, or collecting the sick bags out of airplanes. With Instacart, it makes grocery shopping fast and easy, all while allowing me to stay in my underwear. Instacart allows you to order all of the things you usually get from your local stores, delivered to your door in as fast as 1 hour. Not only that, but it will also give you smart suggestions for new items based off of your preferences, as well as highlight deals to help you save some money. The shoppers handpick perfect produce and make sure that your eggs get to you safely. You can get free delivery on your first order over $35 by following the link in the show notes. This also lets Instacart know that we sent you, and it helps support Whispers from Below. So if you hate grocery shopping as much as I do, try Instacart today and enjoy getting your groceries the easy way. To make matters even worse, the body was possibly raped. There's no confirming or denying that happened. They didn't find anything, but they found enough that they were like, it's possible. It's definitely a possibility that the body was raped. But what's nice is that the fingerprints from the body were very easily identifiable. Because of her other arrest as an underage youth, they were able to identify the body really quickly. The media ended up getting a hold of her mother faster than the police did, and sort of manipulating her to talk about things. They sort of were like, oh, your daughter won a pageant. Why don't you tell us about her? And then they were like, just kidding, she's actually dead. Which is super fucked up. But the media deemed her the Black Dahlia because she was last seen wearing this black suit. So they deemed her that whenever they talked about her. The LA Examiner ended up getting a letter from the supposed killer saying that he would deliver items from her body to the LA Examiner. And then a manila envelope arrived a few days later, cleaned with gasoline, just like everything else, that had her birth certificate in it. It had business cards. It had photos of her. Several fingerprints were lifted from the envelope, but they weren't sent well. So they became compromised within transit and they were unusable. So they couldn't use the fingerprints that they did end up lifting from the envelope. So he cleaned it really, really, really well, but he didn't clean it well enough. And so those fingerprints ended up getting a little bit twisty-wisty, and they were unable to use them, which is a very, very unfortunate series of events, I think. The killer supposedly committed suicide. There was a note that was found in a pile of man's clothing by the side of the ocean. The note basically said, I can't live with what I've done anymore. And I've leapt, if you're reading this, I've leapt into the ocean and I'm dead, is essentially what it said. Now, is this really the person that killed her? There's no verifiable evidence. We don't know because we never got to interview the person. We never got to whatever. This killer also said that they were going to turn themselves in and then found a fake suit, a suicide note, and so it's very who knows what this person was after. Probably just fame. But it's fascinating nonetheless that this person exists in the slightest. So there are some theories. This is where the case sort of takes a turn because it's unsolved. So there are lots of theories on what this is. A lot of people think it could be the work of a serial killer. There were other cases that were not the same but similar in the area of women going missing for a week and then turning up dead. People think that that's Black Dahlia was probably his crowning achievement, and then he stopped because he was I can't do any better than this. There were many, 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 many suspects over the years. There have been tons of theories, books written on it, articles written on it. The media was going wild at the time with theories and accusations and all that good, happy stuff. But part of what made this case so hard to solve was the fact that the media was releasing information that was not factual. So the media was saying, like, oh, she was a prostitute and she was caught out while she was like hooking, which like isn't true. Like, she wasn't a prostitute as far as we know. Like, that's not like a fact. And then they'd be like, well, she actually was a lesbian, so it has to be a female killer. Dun dun dun. And it's like, that's also like not true. She like was actively in relationships with men and like was seen with men. Like, maybe she was like a bisexual queen, but like that just doesn't, it like doesn't track. Other people were saying that she was pregnant, that's why the belly was cut in half, but like the medical examiner would have found something and they didn't find anything that related to pregnancy in any way. So it also like doesn't make sense. There was an article released where they were like, oh, there were all these like cigarette burns all over the body. She was brutally tortured before she was dead. And like that's not true either. Like, the body was like relatively clean, and like the only thing that killed her was probably the hemorrhaging from the cuts on her face. But other than that, like, totally not a painful death. Like, there was no torture, none of that. Possible rape, but like nothing like nothing like we've seen from some other killers. You know what I mean? Like, nothing like that. There are crime reports that say things that aren't true, that say similar things about like torture and rape and all this stuff. And it's just like not verifiable evidence. Like, so then when the police are investigating and there's all this information out there that's like not true, people are coming up confessing to the murder that are like, I know only this information that's from blank media source and there's no way they'll know. So I'm going to confess and get famous. And then obviously they get caught out in a lie. And like it was just like a wild time where the media was just like ruining everything as per usual. um and I think it's something really interesting to note with this case that like they never found the person, and if the media had just like knocked it the fuck off, they might have actually discovered who it was. But they made it so impossible to find whoever the killer could have been that there's just no way that they ever would have found it. um but yeah, that's like pretty much all the information I have. So that is the Black Dahlia case. It's fascinating, it's creepy, it's weird. There are a couple documentaries on it that you can check out. um Short, like little like TV episodes. There's also some articles on it that you can read. I recommend you go and read them. I always recommend after my episodes that you go and like do your own research on this stuff, because there's more info out there than just what I'm telling you. And it's so fascinating and it's so cool. Like, I had such a fun time researching this one. I love like unsolved cases and stuff like that. It's really, really fun. If you guys like this episode, please let me know. You can DM me on Instagram, whispers from below, no spaces, no underscores, no capitals, no nothing. Or alternatively, you can send a message to me on the website whispersfrombelow.com. You can send me a message through the contact page there. There's also merch and all sorts of cool stuff on the website. You can download episodes from there. It's pretty cool. You should definitely go check it out. It's pretty fancy. If you want to support the show in any way, first and foremost, share it, like it, subscribe to it, become a member on the website, do all that good happy stuff, and then you can check out patreon.com/whispers from below. I'd love to get more people involved in the show and sort of stuff that I have in mind. I'd really love to do some more video work. me playing scary video games, maybe do some streams of me playing video games and just have some people pop in and say hello. Yeah, just stuff like that. I really want to do a series on Dead by Daylight, so because I'm obsessed with that game. If anybody is interested in hearing more about that video game or the killers in it or anything like that, please let me know, because I'd love to do a series on it and play every killer and have that sort of content out on YouTube and things like that. But yeah, you should definitely go check out the Patreon. It's super cool. It's a really great way to support the show. And it's for a really, really low cost. You can support the show. If unless you really want to subscribe to the higher tiers, in which case feel free to do so. But our first tier is $5, and it's $5 that just like lets me know that you guys are like into the show and want to keep seeing content pump out. I would really love to get 25 people on that Patreon by the end of the year. So if you guys wanted to help out with that, that would be absolutely amazing. But the very number one thing is just share this podcast with people. The more people I get listening, the more support I get. And that's really the most important thing that I can ask. So remember, Black Dahlia was not an actress. Like, there's just like no way that that was true. I just feel like that's such a fucking lie. Number two, we never caught this killer, and honestly, you could have passed him on the street as like a grandpa, and you like never would have known. Or alternatively, he killed himself in the ocean. Who really knows? But he could have been passed as like grandpa. Like Grandpa George was like a murderer. What fun. And thirdly, if you can, get vaccinated, stay safe. Please, please, please.